An American writer named Morgan Robertson once wrote a book called The Wreck of the Titan. The book was about an unsinkable ship called the Titan that set sail from England to New York with many rich and famous passengers on board. On its journey, the Titan hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sunk. Many lives were lost because there was not enough lifeboats to accommodate everybody. So what is so strange about this? Well, The Wreck of the Titan was written exactly 14 years before the actual Titanic took sail. The sinking of the Titanic was one of the largest non-war related disasters in history, and it is important to be knowledgeable about our past. From the disaster to the movie, the sinking of the Titanic remains one of the most famous tragedies in history. I have been fascinated by the history of the Titanic as long as I can remember, and I have read any book and watched the movie at least 1,000 times. I mean, who could ever forget the famous scene with Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet in the end of the movie? The Titanic was thought to be the largest, safest, and most luxurious ship ever built. At the time of her launch, she was the biggest existing ship and the largest movable object ever built. According to Jeff Tibbles, in his 1977 book, The Titanic, The Extraordinary Story of the Unsinkable Ship, the Titanic was 882 feet long and weighed about 46,000 tons. This was 100 feet longer and 15,000 tons heavier than any ship that is around in today's world. Thrush stated in Titanic, The Truth Behind the Disaster, published in 1992, that the Titanic accommodated around 2,345 passengers and 860 crew members. The beautiful accommodations of the Titanic were decorated and furnished by only the finest items and the best decorators. According to a quote from Shipbuilders magazine, everything has been done in regard to the furniture and fittings that make it first-class accommodation more than equal to what is provided in only the best and finest hotels. The first-class dining room was the largest on any liner. It could serve 500 passengers at only one sitting. Fine parlor suites located on the ship consisted of a sitting room, 2 bedrooms, 2 wardrobe rooms, a private bath, and a lavatory. Other first-class accommodations included a squash court, a swimming pool, a library, barber shop, Turkish baths, and a photographer's darkroom. The Titanic was widely believed to be the safest ship ever built. It is described that the Titanic had an outer layer that shielded an inner layer, a double bottom that was created to keep the water out of the ship if the inner layer of the water out of the ship if the outer layer was pierced. The bottom of the ship was divided into 16 watertight compartments equipped with automatic watertight doors. The doors could be closed immediately if water were to enter into the compartments. Because of these safety features, the Titanic was deemed unsinkable. Now that I have discussed the Titanic itself, I'll discuss the tragedy that happened on April 14th. The Titanic hit disaster head-on when it ran into an iceberg 4 days after its initial departure. The beginning of the maiden voyage was mostly uneventful. It is said that the ship departed from Queenstown in Ireland at 1:30 p.m. on April 10, 1912, destined for the city. The weather was perfect for sailing. There was blue sky, light wind, and a calm ocean. No chance of a storm anywhere in sight. According to Waterlord, A Night to Remember from 1955, the Atlantic Ocean was like polished plate glass on the night of April 14th. The journey took a horrible turn when the ship struck an iceberg and began to sink. Lynch explains that collision occurred at 11:40 p.m. on Sunday, April 14th. The largest part of the iceberg was underwater, but some of the ship's watertight compartments had been punctured and the first 5 compartments rapidly filled with water. Distress rockets were fired and distress signals were sent out, but there was no ships close enough to arrive in time. As the ship went down, some were rescued, but the majority of passengers had no place to go. There were only 20 lifeboats on the ship, and that was only enough for about half of the 2,200 people that were on board. The lifeboats were quickly filled with women and children first. This ship eventually disappeared from sight. At 2:20 a.m. on Monday, the ship broke in half and slowly slipped under the water. At 4:10, another ship that was nearby answered Titanic's distress call and arrived to the rescue with those floating on lifeboats. At the end of the day, 1,500 lives were lost. Now that we've learned about the history of the Titanic, I will discuss the movie that was made about it. A movie depicting the Titanic and with a group of fictional characters was made. According to Marsh, in James Cameron's Titanic from '97, Cameron set out to write a film that would bring the event of the Titanic to life. Cameron conducted 6 months of research to compile a highly detailed timeline so that the film would be realistic. He spent more time on the Titanic than the ship's original passengers because he made 12 trips to the wreckage site that lasted between 10 and 12 hours each. Making Titanic was extremely expensive and involved much hard work. It is said that the film had a $250 million budget. A full-size replica of the ship was constructed in Baja California, Mexico, in a $17 million gallon oceanfront tank. Cameron assembled an expedition to dive to the wreck on the ocean floor to film the footage that was later used in the opening scenes of the movie. The smallest details were attended to, including imprinting the thousands of pieces of china, crystal, and silver cutlery used in the dining room scenes with White Star's emblem and pattern. The movie was extremely successful. The Titanic made approximately $600 million in the United States alone, making it the #1 movie of all time. It approximately made $1.8 billion worldwide and is also the #1 movie ever released in all of the world. Titanic was nominated for a record 8 Golden Globe Awards only a few weeks after its release and won 4 of them. It was also nominated for 14 Academy Awards and it won 11. The Titanic was one of the biggest disasters in our nation's history. But it was more than just a movie, and there was a lot of lives lost that day.